We're busy working through the book of Habakkuk, and the book starts out with Habakkuk asking questions from the Lord, questions that is probably well known to every believer that has ever struggled or experienced anguish. Habakkuk asked, "How long, O Lord?" He asked, "Why are you not upholding justice?" And then the Lord answered Habakkuk. And the old saying that you should be careful what you ask for because you might just receive it still holds water here. Habakkuk asked, "How long?" And the Lord answered, "Very suddenly and very soon." Habakkuk asked, "Why is justice not upheld?" And the Lord answered, "My impartial justice shall bring awesome vengeance, even on my own people." These answers from the Lord have left Habakkuk even more troubled than he was before he received the answers. But now we should be careful to notice in Habakkuk not a weak faith, not the struggle of someone who is losing his grasp on who the Lord is, but rather a perplexed or a puzzled faith. Habakkuk starts in verse 12 by confessing and reaffirming who the Lord is, reaffirming the core beliefs of the Israelites of who God is as the Lord of the covenant. He says in verse 12, "O Lord, are you not from everlasting? My God, my Holy One, we will not die. O Lord, you have appointed them to execute judgment. O Rock, you have ordained them to punish." Habakkuk was certain who God is. But now the Lord was planning to use the Babylonians as an instrument in his hands, and that puzzled him. That is why he continues to say in verse 13, "When your eyes are too pure to look on evil, you cannot tolerate wrong. Why then do you tolerate the treacherous? Why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves?" This problem that Habakkuk has with God using the Babylonians is only worsened when we read verses 14 to 17, where the dehumanizing acts of the Babylonians are described, and where it is described to us that they actually worshipped their way of life, their violent way of conquering other nations, and that it seemed that they would never stop doing this. That's why Habakkuk's final question ends with, "Is he to keep on emptying his net, destroying nations without mercy?" Friends, in this conversation between Habakkuk and the Lord, between the Lord and Habakkuk, we are witnessing the hard work of mature faith in the life of the believer. Habakkuk isn't simply looking for a way out of his circumstances. He isn't simply sort of throwing some sort of a tantrum or trying to blame the Lord for his circumstances in a way that the Lord would feel guilty if he could do that, to just act and get Habakkuk out of his situation. After all, it was Habakkuk that complained to the Lord, that pleaded with the Lord that his people should be rebuked, should be brought back to the right path. But now the Lord is teaching Habakkuk that his love, but also his righteousness, is incomprehensible. Habakkuk is dealing with the Lord, who is much greater than any of us could ever understand. He truly is the great I am, the everlasting God, who speaks and who acts. And yes, sometimes we won't be able to understand why he is saying and why he is doing what he is doing. For some, this realization that God is greater than our understanding might lead to disbelief or rejection. But for those of us living with a mature, spirit grown faith, even though we may be perplexed and really unable to understand what is going on, there will always be the faithful expectation that the Lord will act according to who He is, the everlasting God, our Lord, the Holy One. And that's why this part of the conversation ends in the beginning of chapter 2 with Habakkuk standing and taking his place on the watchtower, on the rampart, looking to see what the Lord will say, listening to hear what He will answer to his complaint. And tomorrow evening we'll come to that wonderful revelation that the Lord gave Habakkuk. Good evening.